Well, and even talking about layoffs, I was laid off twice when I
Mhm.
was first working in the tech industry.
Mhm.
And when I decided to start my own company in the middle of the pandemic, or the start of the pandemic, actually, it was in 2021, I was really worried telling my parents that I was going to do this because we also stress stability. I mean, as refugees, in a
Mhm.
way, they start businesses so their kids don't have to.
Welcome to another episode of Reframe for Resilience. Our guest today is Dr. Julie Pham. Dr. Pham is a best-selling author. She's the CEO of CuriosityBased, and she's the founder of Seven Forms of Respect. Dr. Pham, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Douglas.
Well, I am happy to have you here, and our audience is very eager to hear your story, hear how you reformed, and the things that you do to help others become resilient. So, could you share with us some of your journey?
Yes, and so a really important part of my identity and part of my journey is that I am a Vietnamese boat person. So my parents and I came to the US, fled communist Vietnam. This was 1979, and I was a 2-month-old baby. And then my parents started the first private Vietnamese newspaper in Washington in the Pacific Northwest of the US. And so I grew up with my parents are in a community of entrepreneurs. So I think of them as the hustlers among hustlers. And I learned how to survive. And I think my first reframe is actually thinking of being a refugee because I grew up always believing that was a positive term. And my parents always taught me that to be a refugee is we need to be proud of being refugees. Look at how much we've overcome. And so fast forward, I studied history. I ended up getting my PhD in history. I thought I was going to go into academia. And as I was finishing up my dissertation, I realized I didn't want to do that. And I wanted to go into business. And so I came back to Seattle in 2008, which was the start of the Great Recession. And I worked alongside with my parents at our Vietnamese newspaper where I got my real life MBA, learning how to sell advertising, distribute. It was the best education I ever got. And volunteered a lot. And then I worked with 8 people, half of whom had the same last name as me, and I decided I need to go to a bigger organization. And so I went into the tech industry and I worked in the tech industry for 9 years before starting my own company, CuriosityBased, again in the middle of the pandemic. And uh, and uh, and I, Dr. Douglas, I felt a calling. I was leaving the best job I ever had, and I felt a calling to start my own company, though, even and so the only reason I would leave the best job I ever had was to start my own company.
Yeah. So, as a boat immigrant, a boat person immigrant, which your parents wisely got you to realize that that was a very positive thing, looking at how much you have overcome. They started reframing for you.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a great example of your parents reframing. So tell me, are there any uh, anecdotes, if you like, during those early days that you can think of where you had to reframe? Your parents started the reframe for you.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes. And I mean, I'll even, when I came back to work at the newspaper in 2008, I thought I was going to go into academia, and then all the academic opportunities dried up. There was no postdocs, there was nothing for me as an academic. And I was just, well, I'm going to go this to reframe how we learn. And I have to tell you that when I first came back, even though my whole company right now is around curiosity, I had to reframe even the way that I think about curiosity. Because as an academic, it was very much about accumulating knowledge, accumulating new knowledge and rejecting other scholars' work. And in community building, community organizing, which is what I had to do in running a newspaper, it's about learning from other people. So even reframing how I think about curiosity and about learning and how much value there is in learning just from being with other people and not just in schools and not just from books. And that was hard for me in the beginning. I would be in these community meetings and just, why is this taking so long? Why are we talking so much? Why don't we just get straight to the work? And I realized I was the only one not having fun. And so, and I started to look at how my dad was as a leader and how my parents were and other people who were having fun. And I realized that I had to reframe how I approached learning and how I approached being with other people.
It was interesting that you talked about, part of the uh, academic approach is not only to look for new learning, but also to discount that which is there or to find things that are wrong with that which has already been done. And that immediately puts you in a negative frame. It's
Hmm.
interesting because that frame says that to be an expert, you not only have to find something new, but you also have to say that what was there before was probably not right.
To establish your credibility in a way, you have to just poke at previous scholarship to reinforce how yours is fresh and new. And I think another reframe for me was moving from scarcity mindset,
Hmm.
where there's only a few, because in academia, there's only a few positions. You're
Yeah,
waiting for people to retire or to die,
yeah,
to leave for another university,
yeah.
to abundance mindset,
Hmm.
to wow, there's all of this possibility, and I actually can make even a new field for myself. I can create my opportunities. And I saw my parents do that too. They founded the first private Vietnamese newspaper because they saw an opportunity.
Hmm. The abundance mindset. And it's really quite interesting, particularly now. In fact, you know, I'm frequently asked today from individuals who have lost their jobs because of what's going on in the present administration. And they invariably ask, well, how should I reframe to deal with this situation? And you've just said something that's very interesting. Have an abundance mindset.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have an abundance mindset.
Well, and even talking about layoffs, I was laid off twice when I
Mhm,
was first working in the tech industry.
mhm,
And when I decided to start my own company in the middle of the pandemic, or the start of the pandemic, actually, it was in 2021, I was really worried telling my parents that I was going to do this because we also stress stability. I mean, as refugees, in a
mhm,
way, they start businesses so their kids don't have to. And here I was going to leave my executive job at a nonprofit to start my own company. And my father said, I'm so happy for you because now you're going to have freedom. And when you lost your jobs before, I cried. And
mhm,
now you never have to worry about losing your job because you create your own job. And
mhm,
so when I talk to friends about who have been laid off and they're considering starting their own company, but they're just, I don't know, I really want to have stability. And I reframe again, it's just, the only job you're not going to lose is the one you create for yourself. So if
mhm,
you are considering it, then just remember that. And Dr. Douglas, I am not saying in any way that everyone should have their own company. Some people really want to be employees, and that's wonderful. It's just a reframe, though, that being an employee means permanent stability, because it does not.
mhm, mhm. Very good. So tell us, share with us your 7 forms of respect.
Hmm. So the seven forms of respect is based on the idea that respect is relative, dynamic, subjective, and also contradictory. And that's a reframe on how we think about respect, because
Yes.
typically we think about respect as if it's fixed and universal. And so, as if we all mean the same thing, and we talk about it as if it's something we can measure. How do we be more respectful? And we usually talk about it as respect versus disrespect. And so, my reframe on this is instead of talking about respect versus disrespect, let's talk about how do we get alignment around respect? And to the I like to think of it as disrespect versus lack of respect in the forms that matter to me. And so disrespect then means it's something intentional.
Mhm,
Dr. Douglas, I know you don't like it and I did it anyway. I intentionally disrespected you.
mhm,
Versus lack of respect in the forms that matter to you means maybe I'm just applying the golden rule and I'm doing what it feels respectful to me, to you, and you don't think it's respectful. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's because we don't know each other that well. Or maybe, Dr. Douglas, it's because you keep telling me it's okay and you've condoned my behavior that you find
Mhm.
disrespectful. So that's just a reframe on instead of thinking of it as fixed and universal and we mean the same thing, for us to shift to think, huh, what do you mean by respect? And this is what I mean by respect, and to understand that we probably define respect differently, that it looks different to us.
And how do you take that into your company, Curiosity Based?
hmm So it's actually at the essence of seven forms of respect. It's how do we get curious about respect? When I go into organizations, I have to, from the get-go, dispel a very popular misunderstanding, which is people think I'm there to train them on how to be respectful. Oh, here's the respect lady. She's going to teach us how to be respectful. And I actually let them know I believe you are respectful. I'm not training you on how to be respectful. Actually, what we're talking about is how do we get curious about the different ways we think about respect. And instead of trying to say, oh, you have to see respect the same way, for us to get curious about one another and also to get curious about ourselves, because oftentimes people haven't thought about how they want respect.
Mhm.
They actually just think we already know and they haven't really thought deeply about it. They have been socialized, we've been all socialized to think, oh, respect should be this and this, but we never pause to say, why? Where did that come from?
Dr. Pham, that's really very profound. It's very profound and excellent examples of reframing. Uh, final question for you. How does that help you and others, this approach you have around curiosity, around respect? How does that help you to be resilient?
There are going to be many times where we feel that we've been disrespected, and then that can make us feel uh, just not heard, not appreciated. And so I ask people to actually look inside themselves. And actually, I'm going to do one last reframe in the answer of this question, and that's the reframe of the golden rule to the rubber band rule. So I'd mentioned the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, and that's the way most people think about respect. And
Mhm.
actually, my reframe on that, Dr. Douglas, is what I call the rubber band rule. And so with the rubber band rule, it shows we can all stretch for other people. Dr. Douglas, I know you like to be respected in a certain way. And even though I'm ambivalent, I stretch for you, right? Because I want to show respect. I know that matters to you. And think about how many times we are stretching for people, even though we're like, I don't really like this, not very comfortable with this, but I know they like it and I want to be respectful. And so what happens is we stretch and stretch and stretch until we snap and break. So the reframe is with the rubber band rule is knowing what's going to make me snap. What are my breaking points? I have to be clear myself. That's about self-respect and self-awareness before I can expect anyone else to know. And that creates this resilience of knowledge and of being able then to set boundaries with people so that I am not exhausted trying to please other people and the person who I forget is actually myself. And to also be aware that our rubber band can be different at work and at home, and that context matters.
Very good. As you were talking about the rubber band rule, I was thinking, and what happens when I snap?
hmm
And so I
hmm
was really very, very pleased that you closed the circle, you closed the band by talking about my needing to understand when I snap.
hmm
And so I understand my own rubber band.